My name is Ron Hosen. I put up about 80,000 videos, mostly on investments, but on some other topics, and this will be on a profound topic, but it'll take a while to get to it. So the name of this presentation is 90 Seconds to Orgasm. 90 Seconds to Orgasm was the name of a book that my wife set out to write. She got to tell a great many people about writing it, but I think she only got to page 1. So let me give you some background. I was very slow maturing and was generally afraid to come on to women because I thought that I would execute so poorly that I would be humiliated and traumatized and would never be able to try again. But at approximately age 27, that was the first time. And when I began an exclusive relationship with a woman that I ultimately married, that was when I was 57 years old. So in that 30 years, I probably had, well, I had precisely 33 sex partners. And every single time, I was really nervous. Now, I tend to get nervous at least as often as the average person. But this particular situation was one where I really didn't want to be nervous. So I can remember one time, this was the third woman that I had had intercourse with. It wasn't just one time each. I mean, it was however many I could get them to do it. But the world was not full of women who seemed eager to have sex with me. But, you know, I was on the lookout. And, yeah, I liked it if it was surrounded by romance. I enjoy romance. I enjoy sex also, but I probably enjoy the accoutrements of romance more. So, with this particular woman, she didn't know that I was nervous. And the one thing that worked right, and it was the only thing that worked right, was that I could always have an erection when I needed one. So about 15 minutes into whatever we were doing, we were having intercourse, but I think some conventional way, I lost control. I mean, I had an orgasm. Now, the one strategy I had figured out, that if I'm going to execute this rather important piece of behavior properly, is that I had to hold off. And so I must have held off for 15 minutes. I don't remember. And then I thought, oh my God. And I didn't know what the consequences were, but I knew that I would be able to imagine every possible bad consequence. And so I figured, I better keep going. So I did. Well, turns out that was fairly simple. If I come once, at least at age probably 32 at that time, I can keep going. Men, I could keep going maybe 3 times. And when she finally came, that seemed to be really important to her. And she grabbed me and started hugging me and ended ended that particular try. So I didn't have to go 6, 7 times. Anyway, that was the first time the strategy had to be used and was successful. So this went on for about 30 years. I was nervous each time, but not as nervous. So when I started going with a woman who ultimately we had a 12-and-a-half-year relationship. We were married the last 5 years, and she died. Not from sex. I was 57, she was 37. We took a trip to Lake Tahoe. We'd been going together for a couple of months. And we stayed there 7 days. Now, it was a really fun time. I mean, it was really pleasant, and I already liked her a lot, and I liked her more afterward. So I counted the number of times we had intercourse in those 7 days, and it was 23 times. However, 23 times was more than apparently my natural rate of participation, because I only concluded 12 times with an orgasm. She had, by rough count, by me, not by her, 81 orgasms. So that comes out to be about 3.5. I didn't get an opportunity to clock the time. Now, in 1987, I set out in a 1-week period with somebody I liked, I was going with, and then timed it. And it came out like 14 times in a week. So I was beginning to get a notion of exactly how much sex I was capable of, because I thought it would be handy later. And as long as I'm doing all of these things, well, I may as well have something to occupy my mind. So, as our relationship developed, she began to get the idea that I would be getting old a lot sooner than she, because I was 20 years younger. She was 20 years younger. But it was working out fairly well. And so she began to look at sexual aids for my old age. One of them was a vacuum. Now, I didn't know why it was that if I inserted my penis into a vacuum, I would be more likely to have an erection than I would outside the vacuum. But it was explained to me by my technician dentist that the pressure, the atmospheric pressure on the penis, is being blocked by the vacuum. The vacuum has very, very, very low atmospheric pressure, and the rest of the body has normal atmospheric pressure. And the effect is to encourage the blood to move to an area of lower pressure. And so the penis would fill with blood. But this was weird because, I mean, at first she couldn't induce me to do that. But, you know, I stuck it in briefly. And what happened was that, well, for a few seconds I had an erection. But, you know, I wasn't sexually aroused, so what good is an erection? Well, apparently that was a primitive attempt to use something unrelated to sex to induce blood flow so that people who genuinely had a sexual dysfunction would be able to have an erection. It was a pretty weak attempt. Then there was the little circular clamp that goes at the base of the penis, which would tear the skin. I mean, I could imagine what that would do. I couldn't bear the idea of that. So we dropped that. Now, as I got older, I always started out with her by manually stimulating her for 5 minutes. I had developed that some years before because I was terrified that I'd end up at the end of an evening and my date wouldn't have had an orgasm. So I figured if we get that out of the way first, then, everything else would be gravy. So I would manually stimulate the woman and then penetrate and have intercourse for a pretty good while. And in her case, she was a pretty sturdy woman and a pretty vigorous woman. And so it would kill my arm and my hand and as I tried to put that pressure. And since I worked out with weights and I ran, sometimes I would end up, sometimes I'd end up in bed with an ankle brace or a knee brace, and then I ended up with these wrist braces. So I figured, that wasn't going to work. Okay, so we'll go on to 2.